Okay, so in this week's guitar lesson, we're going to talk about playing chromatically. We're going to talk about what that is and how you can apply this to what you already know. We're going to take the good old minor pentatonic scale, and I'll show you how you can work in some of these chromatic lines to that, and you can totally change the way you play, and it's a really simple concept. And I would argue it's probably the most basic, simple scale there is. And I'll explain why as we get into this. So we're going to take everything that I played in the intro and we're going to break that down note for note over the course of 2 videos. In this video, we're going to go through the first half of that. If you'd like to watch the second half, download the tablature, download the MP3 jam track, which I have in multiple tempos. You can get all of those extra materials so that you can practice this by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP491. Okay, so what is chromatic? What does that word even mean? What does it mean to play chromatically? Well, there is a chromatic scale, and when I first realized this, I thought this was the dumbest thing ever. I just didn't understand it. And in some ways, I still don't, but just follow along here. So if we were to talk about the C chromatic scale, for example, check this out. This is the C chromatic scale. We're going to play from one C note. I'll play to the next C note, an octave higher, and it looks like this. It's just every note along the way to get you from one C to the next C. That's playing the C chromatic scale. And so you don't miss a note. You don't skip any steps. And typically when we play a scale, we're skipping steps. We're creating intervals. And that's what creates the reason or the logic, or makes something sound right versus something wrong. But when you look chromatically, and the reason I said that I didn't get this was that means that there's no wrong notes. And so think about that just sort of philosophically for a minute. You know, what is a wrong note in music, or what is a right note? Well, a right note to you and a right note to me may be something different. What I think sounds right, you know, somebody else might argue with, and somebody else should argue with it. We all have different tastes and different interests. So when I realized that playing chromatically, and it doesn't mean you always do that. That means there is no keys or scales. You would just be playing all over the place. But if you do use it in little increments, it actually can really enhance your playing and give you sort of that out of the box kind of sound. So what I like to do is I like to connect it to something I already know, which is the minor pentatonic scale, and that's what we're going to be doing in this. So this song we're going to be playing is in the key of A minor, and it's actually just an A minor chord and an F chord. We go back and forth. The jam track goes like this, between an A minor and F. And we're going to be staying in the key of the song, so we're only going to really be playing that A minor pentatonic scale. But to give you an example of chromatic playing within a minor pentatonic scale, if we look at our pentatonic scale, A minor pentatonic, instead of me playing it this way, I could start thinking about the notes that I just played there as sort of anchors, like stakes in the ground, but then there's these like in-between notes that I can work in. And that's kind of how I think about playing chromatically, is just filling in those notes in between. That's a very basic, sort of primitive, simplistic way of explaining it and looking at it, but that's kind of what's going on. But here's the thing, you can't do it all the time. You have to be sparing with it. If you just constantly play it outside the box, then you start sounding like you really don't know what you're doing. And so there's this kind of art of finding those stakes in the ground and hitting those, but then kind of messing it up a little bit along the way, and that's okay. And that actually sounds good. It sounds very clever. Here's a quick analogy of that too, and I was trying to think of a good analogy. If you think about where you're sitting or standing, however you're watching this, and then where I'm at, we have 2 points in space. If we were in the same room, if I were walking to you, and we were the 2 points, we were the stakes in the ground, I could just go a straight line to you, and I would be getting from me to you, from point A to point B. Playing chromatically would be more like me going over here and then jumping up and clicking my heels and maybe doing a flip and then still landing over there where you are at that point, but in a sort of more clever way. Either of those is right. One is sort of playing it straight and the other is sort of being goofy about it. And that, to me, is just a real simple way of sort of explaining how some of this kind of works in your playing, how some of playing chromatically works. All right, so let's get back to the song. Now remember, the chords for this are A minor to F. It just goes back and forth between those 2 chords. It does turn around, so there's a 5 chord that I threw in there, which is the E7. Then it goes back to the A minor. So it's A minor, F, E7. Those are the 3 chords in this. Let's listen to the first part now, and then we'll talk it through. All right, so I started with just the good old minor pentatonic scale. 5th fret, 7th fret on the 4th string, 5th fret, 3rd string. That's the first little phrase or idea. Now the next thing goes like this. Now what I'm doing there is I'm coming up to this 8th fret 3rd string. Now that's outside of our minor pentatonic scale. And so you could say, well, that's playing chromatically, and I guess you'd be right on that. You could think of it that way. But this note is a very special note that carries throughout this entire solo, because this note, when we're playing in context of the A minor, this note is your blue note. So your blue note is this one extra note that you can sprinkle into your minor pentatonic scale to convert your minor pentatonic scale to the blues scale. So if you've ever heard of the blues scale is just the minor pentatonic scale with this extra note. So it works really nice over that A minor, right? You can play it slowly. You can hang out on it for a while and it works. You can play it as a passing note. There's a lot of things you can do with that note in context or in reference to that A minor. Now here's where it gets clever though. When you go to the F chord, this note would be the flatted 7 of an F. So if you think of an F7, there's the note, right? So when the song goes to the F chord, I can also hit this note and it gives it sort of that flat 7, that dominant 7 sound for the F chord. So I can basically just play that A minor blues scale through this entire thing. I can just stay on that. And so anyway, is that playing chromatically or is it just playing a blues scale? You could think of it either way. Here's another little connection point you should make or at least the way that I kind of visualize this is that if you're thinking about patterns of your minor pentatonic scale, we've got pattern 1, right? And then we got pattern 2 up here. If I come down to this note, and I want to get from pattern 2 down to pattern 1, look at this. There it is. That note becomes a little bridge to get me from pattern 2 down into pattern 1. And it really doesn't matter if the song is major or minor, so it could be an A major key, and I could do that too. Okay, so we have... And then this next line, I'm just going to let you rely on the tab. You can pause this if you need to, but it goes like this. So that's a really cool little line there, and it relies on sliding a little bit. Let me just break that part down. So we go up here to 8th fret on the 3rd string. We go 8, 7, 5. There's the slide. And then I come up to this 5th fret 2nd string, which is in your minor pentatonic scale, remember? Just keep that minor pentatonic scale in the back of your head. Really cool. It's something to think about adding to your minor pentatonic scale, that one little blue note there. And then after that, I played this line. It's a Mark Knopfler line. Let's listen to it in context. And the way that you play that is barring the first 2 strings on the 5th fret, and then you come down here to the 7th fret 3rd string, do a full bend there, and then go 2, 1. It's a good old Chuck Berry, right? So it's bend, 2, 1, and then we're going to come to the 8th fret 2nd string and do another bend, and then hit that same note that we bent to here, that same A note. So what you have is, now that's an Eric Clapton lick that you hear him use through his entire career. You can go all the way back and hear him using that one. So anyway, it's, and then once we get to this A note, we go. That's the Mark Knopfler part. To me, that's kind of a hybrid of the two. So from this 5th fret 1st string, we come up to this note, which is the 7th fret on the 1st string, and then we go back down. So 5, 8, 5. So all together, it's a cool lick. You might walk away from this lesson with nothing but just that lick and be happy, be satisfied, right? All right, so then that next part goes. Again, keep the minor pentatonic scale pattern 1 in your head, because that's what, to me, that's what this is all anchored in. But we're starting on the 5th fret 2nd string, and we're doing a half bend. Now, what's that note? Well, that would be a note that would be in your natural minor scale. So that'd be your A minor scale. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I'm bending outside of the minor pentatonic scale into the minor scale just for that one moment there. Bend and release. Then we have 7, 5 on the 3rd string. And then back to that blue note. I love that note, the 8th fret 3rd string. And then we land on the 7th fret 4th string. Okay, so this next phrase is all about chromatics. Check this out. It sounds like, what's going on? When you first hear that, you probably think, wow, what is that? Well, it's really just taking a look at, I'm thinking about in terms of chord shapes, like the cage system, this would be the D area. So think your D shape. So you have your E shape here, right? And then you have your D shape here for A. And I'm starting up here where my pinky is, if I'm playing that. That's the way that I play it anyway. That would be the 10th fret 2nd string. And we're going to walk chromatically down. This would also be in minor pentatonic scale pattern 2. Right? So just to get your boundaries and understand where we're at. We're going to start there and we're going to walk down 10, 9, 8, 7. Straight down the chromatic path there. And then we're going to go down to the 3rd string and go 9, 8, 7. So put it together, we have. And then we go down to the 4th string and play. And that's 10, 9, 7. And when you play it all together, it sounds like this. And you can think about that in terms of minor pentatonic scale, pattern 2, starting there. So if you want to use this lick in something else, just reference it from minor pentatonic scale pattern 2, start there with your pinky, and then use that. And you could use different variations on timing. You could go down it, up it, all of that. But anyway, that's where it is in reference to your minor pentatonic scale. All right, so once we get to the bottom of that chromatic lick, I play this. It's kind of sloppy. So what I'm doing here is I'm on the 7th fret 4th string up to the 9th fret, and then watch this. So that's 10, 9, 7. It's a little pull off. Now you could do that with your pinky or ring finger, whichever is easiest. For me, it was easier to do that with ring finger. And then I come down here to this 10th fret 5th string, back to the 7th fret 4th string. So all together. And that's actually a hammer-on with my ring finger. So it's like this. And then we're going to slide to the 12th fret 5th string, and that's putting us in another pattern of the minor pentatonic scale. That's all that is. I do this all the time. I just find the one note and then I slide to that same note in a different pattern. Now I would be in like the bottom part of pattern 3 or pattern 4, the way that I describe it in the lead course. You've got this little box here between these two frets, between 10th fret and the 12th fret, on the 6th, 5th, and 4th. And then you can go up into that little part of it. All right, so once we get into this box, I play this. And that's going back to that blue note. This time it's on the 13th fret 4th string. And there's a slide there, so it's 10, 12, hit the 13th fret, slide back to the 12th fret. And then down to the 12th fret 5th string. And then watch this. So there's a hammer-on. And actually what I'm doing is I'm borrowing strings 5 and 4 on the 10th fret, and I'm doing a hammer onto the 12th fret 5th string. And that's just taking advantage of that little minor pentatonic box that I was just talking about in this area. 12th fret 6th string, slide down, hit the low E string. This is where the song goes to that E chord, that E7 chord. All right, so after I slid down to that E, I came up and did an upstroke on strings 1 and 2, just the open strings, really. Now, I probably played the E chord with my left hand, but I didn't really need to. I just needed this. So, and then I played that E7, or tried to really make that E7 sound out by doing this. Let me show you this. This is just the E7, think of your A7 shape that you learn in first position. If you were to play it up here, there's your E chord using the A shape. If I were to bar there on the 9th fret, strings 1, 2, and 3, but then put a finger here on the 10th fret, 1st string, I've got my 7 chord. Now all I did was I played like the 6th interval of that. So I just played strings 3 and 1. And I gave it some vibrato when I did that. You could do that or not, but that's a technique I learned from Robert Cray. He would do that a lot, like vibrato on a chord. So it's... And then I go back down and hit the E again, and then the second time I went and played it like that. So this time I'm thinking about just the A shape. So that's my E chord using the A shape, and I'm on strings 4 and 2 on the 9th fret. Same technique. So the first time it's... And that's really all there is to that first part. Now hopefully you can go back and watch this again if you have questions about anything and start to see this chromatic thing. I didn't use it a lot in this first half. I actually use it a little more in the second half, but it is in there. And even if you're just looking at the blue note, you can think of that as a chromatic note that lives inside your minor pentatonic scale. You know, it's just one note, but it really colors it. And actually, by adding it, it converts your minor pentatonic scale into the blues scale. All right, we'll see you in part 2 where we'll go over the second half. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button and then hit that alert bell. Then we can be friends. You can be notified as I put out new stuff, which I do every week. All right, we'll see you in part 2.